Imagine this. You've spent 40 years saving. You've saved maybe $1 million, maybe 2 million, could be more. You check your accounts regularly on your app. You pay attention to all the market headlines. You think about taxes, healthcare costs, and inflation. And every single morning, you still get up and go to work. Retirement seems close. You hear about your friends retiring. Your coworkers are all taking their trips and talking about their plans. Yet every time you consider stepping away, another question shows up. What if the market drops? What if healthcare costs are higher than expected? What if I retire and later realize I should have worked a few more years? So retirement gets pushed back. 1 year, and another year, and perhaps another year. So what's actually interesting is that you actually have enough money to retire pretty comfortably. You simply don't realize it and have confidence in it. So in this video, I want to show you how to evaluate this for yourself. Because if you're between ages 55 and 70, there may be a point where continuing to work has less to do with improving your overall retirement outcome and more to do with the simple uncertainty around this decision itself. Hi, I'm Chris Knight with Cornerstone Wealth Planning, and one of the biggest questions that we help clients answer is simply, do I actually have enough to retire? And if at any point during this video you'd like help evaluating your own retirement strategy, I've included a link in the description where you can schedule a complimentary call with our team. Okay, let's start with understanding this decision and understanding why it becomes so important in the framework to make a good decision. Understanding the retirement transition that most people never prepare for. Most retirement advice focuses on accumulation. Save more, invest more, max out your retirement accounts, build your retirement portfolio, and for the most part of your working life, that's exactly the right objective. Then retirement gets closer and the conversation begins to change. Now the focus shifts to generating income from these assets you spent years and decades building. And this is often where many people get stuck because it's simply not familiar. Savings is familiar. Watching account balances grow is familiar, but living off of those assets simply is not. And I've seen people spend years preparing financially for retirement while never becoming comfortable with the idea of using the money that they've accumulated. And as a result, retirement gets delayed. Not because the numbers necessarily require it, but because nobody's shown them the numbers and how they translate into retirement lifestyle long term. And that's where clarity becomes so valuable that once people understand the math behind the decision, retirement often starts feeling less intimidating. And that starts with just understanding a handful of numbers. So step number one, let's understand what you own. The first step is understanding your financial foundation. So let's start with what we call your assets. That would be checking accounts, savings accounts, investment accounts, 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, your cash reserves. Anything available to support retirement. We'll leave off your personal residence for now, assuming we obviously need somewhere to live and we don't want to use our house to pay the bills. So next, we're going to identify on the same idea, assets. The opposite would be your liabilities or your debts. So that could be things like a mortgage balance, any loans that you have, car loans, other loans, your credit cards, anything that you still owe. And this gives you a snapshot of your financial position today. Now, this is often where many people stop, and that could be a mistake because net worth alone doesn't determine your overall retirement readiness. In other words, someone could have a very high net worth, but still struggle financially. And someone else could have far less in overall net worth, but be set up for a very comfortable retirement. Now, the difference often comes down to income, which brings us to step number two, which is understanding and finding your income gap. So your income gap is one of the most important retirement planning concepts that you'll learn. And the calculation can be pretty simple. So what we'll do is we'll start with your expected retirement expenses, and we'll subtract from that your guaranteed income sources. Now, guaranteed income sources is a little bit of a specific category in itself. So think about Social Security income for most everyone. Some may have pensions. Something like reliable, predictable rental income is also a good option to include, or other predictable income streams. So what ends up being left between those two numbers is your income gap. In other words, this is kind of the amount the portfolio needs to provide or that you're going to withdraw from the portfolio each year to fund your overall lifestyle. Now, real quick, here's an example. Let's say your retirement expenses are $8,000 per month. And let's say your Social Security is your one guaranteed income source, which pays you $5,500 per month. So that leaves a monthly income gap of $2,500, which times 12 is $30,000 per year. And that's the amount that your investments need to generate or that you're withdrawing from them overall for that year. And now, if you're evaluating this actual income need instead of relying on just guesses, that creates a lot more clarity and confidence. And many people discover that they're far closer to retirement than they ever thought when they do this calculation. Others discover they still have a lot of work to do because it's a very large, meaningful income gap. Either way, they finally will start to have an answer. And real quick, by the way, if this is helpful, this is exactly what we help clients with every day at Cornerstone Wealth Planning. And if you'd ever think it'd be beneficial and would like help building your own retirement blueprint, there's a link in the description where you can schedule a complimentary call with our team. So let's move on now to number 3. So the next part is we need to identify your liquid assets. So one mistake people make is counting every asset that they own. So that would also include things like your house, your cars, any collectibles. But if you don't intend to sell those items, then we shouldn't really focus on them because we're not able to generate income off of those types of assets. So generally speaking, for liquid assets, we're looking at investment accounts, retirement accounts, cash reserves, money market funds, those sort of overall accounts. So for our calculation purposes, let's just assume that those add up to be $1 million here in this example. So now we're ready for one of the most revealing calculations in retirement planning, which is step number 4. Let's go ahead and calculate your withdrawal rate. So now your withdrawal rate is calculated by taking your annual income gap and dividing it by your liquid assets. So real simple in our example, that would be $30,000 of income gap divided by $1 million of liquid assets. So real simple, 30,000 divided by 1 million is a 3% withdrawal rate. Now this is where retirement planning often becomes much less emotional and much more measurable. So real quick, just from a historical standpoint, many retirement plans target withdrawal rates somewhere in this 4 to 5% level if we're looking at sort of 25, 30-year retirement periods in front of us. Now, obviously, a lot of this depends upon age, longevity expectations, taxes, your investment allocation, other planning considerations, but usually a 4 to 5% overall withdrawal rate is pretty sustainable over most cycles of 25 or 30 years. So now, think about it this way as well. A 3% withdrawal rate may indicate a significant margin of safety simply because you're taking out a lot less here at the beginning. So a 4% withdrawal rate, again, may be that one that's very reasonable. And as that number moves higher, let's say beyond 5%, maybe 6%, certainly beyond 6 or 7, then additional planning may be needed. So in other words, it just may be that we need to tweak a couple of items, either plan to work a little bit longer, save a little bit more, lower the income gap by lowering the expenses, delay Social Security so you can have higher overall guaranteed income. Those sort of options come to the table. Now, this single calculation will help create a lot of clarity because retirement stops feeling like a vague question and starts becoming something that you can actually evaluate when you understand these numbers. So now let's discuss when these numbers tell a different story. So one of the most common conversations I have with people approaching retirement often sounds sort of like this. They say, Chris, I think I'm close and just don't know if I can pull the trigger on retirement. And I understand the hesitation because major life transitions, if you think about them, one of the biggest we'll all face is retirement. But sometimes the numbers can tell a different story than the fear that someone's feeling. So I've seen people with strong Social Security benefits, really strong, healthy investment portfolios, and very manageable spending needs, and let's even say withdrawal rates under 3%, just continue to work year after year after year because they never took the time to evaluate their plan properly. The money was there, but their overall confidence in the plan was not. So once that uncertainty gets replaced with true clarity, something interesting begins to happen. People start making decisions very differently. With clarity, they enjoy travel, they spend more time with their family, they pursue hobbies, they volunteer more, they enjoy the flexibility that retirement was supposed to create in the first place. Because eventually, another reality becomes impossible to ignore. And unfortunately, that is that time is finite. So the big question becomes, what happens to the money that we never end up spending? So if your projections run conservatively show a high probability of success, and your assets continue growing, and your spending again remains conservative, then what is the purpose of the money that you're accumulating? Now, for some people, it's to help family. For others, it could be charitable giving. For others, it could be more experiences like travel and making memories while they're healthy enough to enjoy them. So there's no universal correct answer, but it's a great question worth asking, because many retirees spend years focusing on protecting money that they've already won. Meanwhile, the opportunities that money was supposed to create keep getting pushed out further and further into the future. And eventually, that future may not arrive. Now, if this conversation is resonating with you and you would like help building your own retirement blueprint, then there's a link in the description where you can schedule a complimentary call with our team. Now, all this sounds great when the numbers support retirement. But what happens when you run the numbers and you're not quite ready yet? So let's talk about when time is needed to make the numbers work. So not everyone's ready to retire today. Some people generally need to do more into additional savings. Some may find it easiest to work a little bit longer and earn more income to put more into savings. And some simply need a stronger base plan that is more coordinated and integrated overall. Now, if your withdrawal rate is too high, again, that plus 6-7% range, there's really just a handful of options. Number one, you can work longer. Number two, you can save more. Number three, you can reduce spending. Number four, you can optimize as best you can and adjust other dials elsewhere. Keep in mind, retirement is not a race. The purpose of this process is not to convince anyone to retire before they're ready. It's to understand where you stand today so you can make informed decisions about tomorrow. Because once you understand the numbers, you will have choices. Without that understanding, it's easy to keep postponing decisions simply because you're unsure. Most people spend decades asking, how much money do I need? But eventually a different question becomes important. What is this money supposed to do for me? And that's where retirement planning becomes very personal. Sometimes for some people it's freedom, others it's travel, others it's family, it's experiences, flexibility, or simply peace of mind. Now the numbers matter, but the purpose behind the numbers matter more. And that's why I encourage people to understand three quick, important framework things from this: their income gap, their liquid assets, and their withdrawal rate. Because once those numbers become clear, the retirement conversation becomes much easier. You can evaluate where you stand, you can identify risk, you can see opportunities, and you can make decisions with far more confidence. So now here lies the question that I want to leave you with. If you already have enough, would you know it? Because for many people, the biggest risk isn't retiring too soon. It's spending these years working for money that they'll never actually spend. If you'd like help building out your own retirement plan, evaluating whether you're truly ready to retire, then click the description and the link where you can schedule a complimentary call with our team. Because at some point, retirement planning becomes less about accumulating additional assets and more about understanding the assets that you've already built and how those can support the life and the retirement that you've desired to have. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.